Minister, I think it's really concerning that the Leaving Cert results aren't going to be out again, if they're not going to be out till September. It causes all kinds of problems, as you know, particularly in terms of students trying to make choices and trying to get accommodation and all of that. It's extra pressures that students don't need to bear. And I've spoken to many people, many teachers who are marking the papers, and they said, we just couldn't. And I said, why wouldn't you continue with it? There's extra payments for it and everything. I said, it's a bureaucratic nightmare in the way that papers are marked, sent back, back and forward. That really has to be not just looked at, it has to be sorted out, so that there are enough markers and that it's attractive enough for markers to do the job and for teachers to do the job, because the end results of it aren't good on any of us, and they're just another pressure there. And I would ask that every effort would continue to be made to bring that date forward to the middle of August, because even the couple of weeks at that time make a big difference to young people who are already under severe pressure on that. So that's all I'd say about that. In terms of school transport, you didn't mention the F word, the word that I was looking for, and that was flexibility. And I really would urge, even at this stage, I want to kind of know as well, when the report will be completed, but when will it be published? And then when will the recommendations that are in the report be implemented? Can we say that it's not going, any changes aren't going to be implemented for this year, that they would be implemented the following year? And just on the school transport, under subhead A9, the funding towards school transport has been reduced by 55.5 million. That's 20%. But the department has indicated that their targets are for an increase in the number of students using the transport from 122,217 in 22 to 125,220 in 23. If the target is to increase the number of students, just to maybe explain why the funding has been reduced there. But the main thing we need in school transport is flexibility to meet the needs of the children and families who desperately need it, particularly in rural Ireland. And I just want to ask you, in terms of, and I raised this with the department the last day, the capital funding. Capital funding in schools where the numbers aren't increasing, and I gave an instance of, say, school in Swinford. So their numbers are at 60, so they have 60 students, and they don't have a hallway and don't have very basic facilities. What are we doing in order to meet those the needs of those schools? Or say we have another school in Bangareras, say, where they need the tarmac done because they have a wheelchair user, or in Achill, where in Solja School, where they have no outside shelter. So there's basic needs. What I'm afraid of is that, and I completely understand that decisions are population driven, but where we have children going to school, they deserve to be treated in the same way as other children, particularly in meeting their basic needs, whether it be a shelter, a place outside to play, or a hallway. Just tell me what the policy is around that, because the summer work scheme doesn't cover things like that. It just isn't sufficient to cover that. And that's all. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Deputy. Just specifically in terms of the Leaving Certificate date, I do want to acknowledge that there has been general and broad agreement that it is right and it is proper that once the exams conclude in June, that going into July, there would be a second sitting of Leaving Certificate exams. I think that's only fair, and I say that as somebody who spent a lot of time in the classroom. I believe every young person should get the maximum opportunity, and if by some misfortune that they have an illness, or for the last year or so it was COVID or whatever, that they will have another opportunity to take the Leaving Certificate exam. I think that's fair. As a consequence, if we believe in that essential fairness, then we must acknowledge that that will have an impact for the State Examinations Commission in terms of when they will have completed the oversight of the correction of the exams. That obviously is a given. Notwithstanding that, It is, and I have engaged with the State Examinations Commission on this. I have met with them on a number of occasions. There were specific issues in terms of it, and you've identified it, in terms of attracting sufficient number of correctors. Significant work has been done again this year to make it more attractive. I'd like to point out as well that significant work, you referenced, work being corrected and work being sent on and work being sent back again. That has almost, though not entirely, disappeared, because the vast majority of correction now is online, which is again streamlined it and makes it much more attractive for teachers to correct the work in the first instance. So, every year incrementally there have been improvements, and significantly, as you've referenced yourself, significant financial improvements for staff, and that will be the case again this year. The State Examinations Commission have not adjudicated at this point, and I will understand why, as to when the results will be available, until all of this body of work is completed. But I am very clear, and I think they are very clear, that we need it at the earliest possible date, notwithstanding the challenges that they have. In terms of the school transport system, and your reference to the flexibility being the centre of it, that is the whole impetus, really, if you like, for the entire review. Like yourself, I come from a rural constituency. I know the value of the school transport system. I absolutely do, and I know it's of particular interest to you as well in constituencies like yours. The school transport review is looking at that element of flexibility, where everything from the distance criteria to the appropriate eligibility to the cost, all of these different aspects are informing the review. It is my hope that that review will be completed in the next short while. It will, of course, as a review and a report, then have to go to government, signed off by government, and then obviously it will be published. So there is an element of time involved in that. But and I must allow that to proceed. I want to acknowledge that there has been enormous engagement from the general and wider public in terms of the school review or the school transport review as well. So we are completing the work as quickly as we possibly can, but it will obviously then demand an engagement with DEEPR, and obviously reference was already made to it, and I have clarified the point. DEEPR also sit on this interdepartmental committee around the school transport review. In terms of the specific cases that you raise in various parts of your constituency, in terms of clarity around, if there is an access issue for any child or young person with additional needs, whether it's tarmac or whatever, and there's an access issue, that will be, and you might just give me the detail on that, because any question of access for a child with additional needs in terms of school, the costs that will be met by the department. So you might just give me the detail on that. In terms of other issues that might arise within the school, there is significant, in fairness, you've referenced it, there's the summer work scheme, there's the emergency work scheme, there are the other grant provisions that are made available to the school, and if there's a specific need that cannot be met by the school, I would ask that the school would engage directly with the department in relation to it. Thanks very much. And just in reference, and you've referenced that they are small schools, and all of that, it does not matter the size of the school. The importance is that, in particular, as I said, if a child with additional needs has an access issue, that we would identify it and we would rectify it. And there is a place in the education system for small schools too. I can say that also as somebody who comes from a rural constituency. Yeah, thanks.